Awesome. Well, we're so thrilled. There's so many sparks and wonderful. And it's so great to have a sister here. And I also want to recognize it's Kelly. So we are also Eastern Band Cherokee. So James Welch, who wrote Fool's Crow, he's named after his great grandfather, which was James Welch, who was the son of the first elected Eastern Band Cherokee chief. So there's another Blackfoot, North Carolina connection, big time. So that's really thrilling. It is. There must be a reason. And then you two are sitting next to each other. It's like a sign. I don't know. It's a total sign. All right. So Elizabeth, where are we?
Well, thank you all so much for sharing. It's, I'm a child of a teacher, and right. Thank you. And
Survivor.
I could tell my own apocalypse survival story. No, I just feel so at home with you all. I feel inspired by you all. I recently did some subbing over the winter because I'm a farmer and I have downtime. And my experience working with middle school special ed kids and kindergartners and third graders in a rural school district, I live in a very rural place, they're not doing great. The kids are not doing very well. And so I just want to, before we lose the opportunity and the time, I just want to share huge gratitude to you and all the work that you're doing and all the kids that you support and all the lives that you connect with.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
But now we're going on a journey. And that journey is into the world of the marrow thieves. So today we're going to be moving through some activities where we explore themes of identity, hope, and survival inspired by Indigenous speculative fiction and the YA novel The Marrow Thieves by Cherie Dimaline. This is an interactive workshop, so be prepared. We're about to give you your first thing here soon. You will create a curricular go bag, and we'll talk about what that is in a minute, for using Indigenous speculative fiction in the classroom. Surviving an apocalypse or teaching young people about Indigenous history and Native authors requires creative tools for understanding what teachers need to unpack, prepare, and gather to take with them. So we're going to be using this idea of a go bag throughout the day to kind of talk about different tools. But first I want to do an overview of the Marrow Thieves so that we can really dive into this book a little bit more. So in the Marrow Thieves, our main characters are on the run because of newly reinstated boarding schools in the not too distant future. Recruiters, that's the boarding school, residential school employees. Recruiters hunt down Indigenous people to harvest their bone marrow. In Dimaline's world, non-Native people have lost the ability to dream, and they're slowly being debilitated and dying because of this pandemic of dreamlessness. In contrast, Indigenous people can still dream, and many surviving Indigenous folks who are not in residential schools survive in the woods, searching for community, and always looking out for recruiters. Our main character is Frenchie, or Francis, who's a 16-year-old Métis teenager who's lost both of his parents and his brother. Or has he? You'll have to read the novels. So he's kind of found by a group of Indigenous folks who've escaped, who have their own stories about how they were able to kind of survive. And the group is led by Miigwans and Minerva, and these are two elders, and the rest of the group is a mixture of children, young children, preteens, and young adults. And so that is the really, really, really Cliff Notes summary of the Marrow Thieves. Because we're trying not to spoil it because we really want you to read it. So yeah, do you want to add anything, Mom?
We're going to ask you to step into this world. So we're going to paint a picture of the world of the Marrow Thieves. And relationships are so important. So when we met with the OTP students on Thursday night, and they've all read Marrow Thieves, they had such brilliant things to say about the book. And one of them was all about the relationships between this chosen family group of people. Liz, do you want to add anything?
There's some really interesting emotional pieces in this book, and I've been able to use it to teach my OTP students about Native culture, because a lot of them don't know almost anything about it. And there's a lot of really good learning moments in this book.
Yeah. Beautiful. Are you ready to start stepping into this world? Okay, this is so fun. This is the way I would want to spend any Saturday. So thank you all for nerding out with us.
Okay, Mom, it's all
I'm
you.
ready. You want to?
Yep.
Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit shortly about as Elizabeth said, what you're going to need in a go bag. Do you want to say something about or should we just leave?
No, remember we
Okay.
decided we need you to start your journey.
Yes.
Start recording your journey because we're going to talk at you while you're doing some activities.
Yes. Okay, so you're going to make a journal out of a piece of paper. Are you all familiar with doing this? If not, this is really fun. Okay, so you're going to fold your paper like a hot dog.
I'm having so many flashbacks right now. This is really special for me.
I was a second grade and first grade teacher for the majority of my teaching career. Okay, so folding it like a hot dog. And then we're going to fold it again. Okay. So again, fold it like a hot dog, then fold it one more time. Okay, and then you're going to fold yet another time. So it should look like this. Okay, so again, I'll show you from beginning. Hot dog in half, in half again. Okay. Is everybody there? Fantastic. Oh my gosh, this is so not like doing it in the classroom, right? You all are such good
40
students.
minutes
Teachers
later.
are notoriously, bad students, but not this group, right? Okay, so open it back up, and then you're gonna fold it like a hamburger. Okay. Magically, you should have scissors at your table. And this is where it gets a little, this is where it's important to see. Okay, so again, we folded it like a hamburger, and there's going to be, as you see here, this little line. You're going to cut from the crease on the fold. You're going to just cut this just to this first section. That's it, from here to here. Okay, Bethany, would you hold yours up to show everybody? Great.
Oh.
It should look like that. Awesome. Bethany gets a prize. All right, so it should be like that. Okay, great. So let me grab
You're done one.
my sample one.
It's like a cooking show.
It is like a cooking show. Okay, so now you should have a big hole in there. So again, like a hamburger, fold it over. This is where it gets fun. And then accordion it. Push it in. And look at that. Okay, I'll do it again. Mine's folded really, it's got a good crease in it. Okay, so you had it cut like this, like a hot dog. So now you're gonna go back and open it up and fold it over like a hot dog, and then take the edges and push them in.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Isn't that cool? Like this.
like Bethany, but sorry, Bethany, not
Yeah,
to...
just like Bethany. Gold stars. Okay, I know. Oh my gosh. Aren't you glad it's going to be next, you all here where I can see name tags. And this should be your book. So you've got your journal. This is your special Marrow Thieves journal. Yes. All right.
Okay.
Creasing it is really, helpful. Great. Okay. Journal is created.
The journal is created. Okay. Oh, does anyone need help?
Yep. High school teachers, they got it going on. Okay, let's see those journals.
Great.
Ooh, they're beautiful.
Excellent.
They're so beautiful.
Lovely.
All right, fantastic. Now
Okay, so
we
you've
begin.
got your journal, right? But where are you going to put it? You need something to carry your journal around in. So we're going to talk about go bags. So what is a go bag? We've been saying it over and over and over again. I want you to imagine that you're in the world of the Marrow Thieves. You're in a dystopian world where millions of people have died from pandemic, the plague of dreamlessness. You're on the run. You're out in the woods. You're often cold and hungry. You have to, sleep only a couple nights in one place and keep moving. This is also a world that's been heavily impacted by climate catastrophe. So it's raining more than it ever has. The storms are fiercer. There's just there's a lot going on, and your chosen family is on the run, being hunted down by these recruiters from these reinstated residential schools. So that's the world of the Marrow Thieves. And so when you're on the run, you need a backpack, right? Or you need a bag, because you might have to just get up and go in the middle of the night, and you need to kind of be ready. So the go bag is a really important theme, I guess, in speculative fiction broadly. And there's we got to bring Octavia Butler into this. Octavia Butler, has anyone read an Octavia Butler? Yeah, Liz, because you're a super speculative fiction fan. She is the author of many, many books. She's a incredibly accomplished and renowned Black speculative fiction author. And she wrote these books called The Parables. It's a series of books, another dystopian world where the main character, Lauren Olamina, who's also a teenager at the beginning of the series, has to leave her home very quickly in the middle of the night because of these apocalyptic conditions that she's living in. And this is actually her go bag. This is her survival pack. And last night or a couple nights ago, we got the audience to participate and say, okay, well, you're in this dystopian world. What do you think is going to go in your go bag? And people said hatchets and matches and emergency blankets and dried food. And those are all really great things to have in your go bag. But there's also some key things that that Lauren Olamina, the main character in Octavia Butler's novels, it's really important to note this kind of like, when we're talking about survival, we can be talking about physical survival, right? Basic needs. But what about values? What about what you're surviving for? What about your identity? What about your hope that's motivating you to even make it out of these really difficult and painful situations? So in addition to the hatchets and the Swiss Army knives and the canteens, you'll also see up there seeds, yeah, and a journal, and acorn flour, and something that I think is really interesting I won't go into it too, actually, I'll just leave it. So there's more, right? There's in Octavia Butler's go bag and Lauren Olamina's go bag, there's a sense of, I want to live beyond just surviving. I want a life at the end of this where I can grow seeds, where I can see a future where these, I can live. And then, Mom, you want to?
Yeah. One of the books that we recommended to folks in terms of like theoretical foundations is a book that just came out in February by Eve Ewing called Original Sins: The Miseducation of Black and Native Children and the Construction of American Racism. And so you'll notice too that even though this Marrow Thieves book is focused primarily on Native experiences, there's also a lot of multiracial characters. There's also characters who reflect multiple genders and have multiple relationships out of heteronormativity, which is really powerful. So we also wanted to bring in some Black scholars into this conversation as well. And Elizabeth and I are huge fans of Taya Miles. And for the historians in here, this is such an incredible book. It's called All That She Carried: The Journey of Ashley Sack, a Black Family Keepsake. So so when we talk about go bags, we couldn't talk about this without highlighting Ashley Sack. And so just briefly, this book highlights an object found in a museum, and we have an image of it later. Maybe we could just show it really
You want
quickly.
it really quick?
If you don't mind. And so this is the sack that was found in a museum, and Taya Miles decided to go on a journey to find out whose sack was this. So what you might not be able to see there is embroidered onto this sack. It says, "My great-grandmother Rose, mother of Ashley, gave her this sack when she was sold at age 9 in South Carolina. It held a tattered dress, 3 handfuls of pecans, a braid of Rose's hair. Told her, it be filled with my love always. She never saw her again. Ashley is my grandmother, Ruth Middleton, 1920. So people have been giving and filling and hoping these kinds of what we're calling curricular go bags, for a lack of a better name, for generations and generations. So we wanted to bring in this. Although this is a horrible historical moment, and this bag was created in the separation of family, it was created in the hope that these generations of women would remain.
So we're going to ask you to, in your journal, your first, as we prepare for our journey, what would your go bag look like? What does your bag look like? What material is it made out of? How do you feel when you put your go bag on your person? And then what aspects of your identity, culture, and go bag and family history make your go bag unique? And you can just draw in the first page, Mom, or
Yeah.
the outside?
Nope, the outside you get to design with your name or however you want your journal to look like. But the first page, the first inside pages will be where you can draw your own. And there's markers and all sorts of fun. So you can just be your creative self.
And we're going to read to you
Yes.
and talk to you while you do that.
And just again, as you're thinking about what does your bag look like, and Elizabeth has a couple examples, Taya Miles also reminds us that artifacts are metaphorical expressions of culture. So again, when we were thinking about different kinds of go bags, like what they might look like, you might. Taya Miles had shared with us that in thinking about this particular bag of Ashley's, All That She Carried: The Journey of Ashley Sack, what is the story of this cloth? Who were the mothers and daughters who touched it? What compelled Black women to struggle in defense of life in a system that turned mere existence into hardship? How did they maintain their will across generations in bleak times? And what can Black women's creative response to the worst of circumstances teach us about the past and offer us for the future? And you could, really, this quote is so powerful. You could, take out Black women's and put in other historically marginalized groups and easily be able to respond to those questions. In terms of some of the ideas we had for bags, I know we're like, so what would if we were going right and we were living in the time of our great and great great grandmother, we'd probably have our parfletch with us, like in the upper right hand corner, and we'd have our travois to carry all of our goods. But there's also some more modern, ways, like maybe we could just sew a bag, or even maybe more important than something to carry all these items would be like a medicine bag. So this would be a Blackfeet framework. We were inspired by a lot of Coast Salish and Plateau folks in baskets and the metaphor of baskets. These are so powerful. They can hold water. They're just like phenomenal. And they also hold stories and that representation of these interwoven stories. Elizabeth, I think we had one more. Do we have one more slide?
I'm going to read to them.
Okay, great. So what does your bag look like? What's your cultural bag? And what are a couple of things that you need in that bag, whether it's a backpack, or a basket, or a parfletch, or
something no one's ever seen before. I was thinking, I go hunting with my partner, deer hunting, and what if I had my big hunting pack frame backpack, but I had beadwork all over it. Like it just the sky's the limit. This is speculative fiction. Just go to town.
All right, enjoy your artistic self while Elizabeth reads to us.
So I'm going to, a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is how do we talk about, nice, thanks, Mom. Because Cherie Dimmeline does such an amazing job of this. How and why is it important to talk about the dark parts of Native American history? And how do we do that while still creating opportunities for hope and joy and the possibility of future? So we're gonna talk about some hardcore stuff. So I mentioned to you the character of Minerva. She's this old woman who speaks Anishinaabe, who cares for the, I'm gonna spoil it to read this quote. Shoot, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. How spoiler are you all feeling? You okay to be a little spoiled? Okay.
We'll just say something happens to Minerva. Oh, yeah. Okay, spoiler alert. Minerva gets taken by the recruiters in the book. She sacrifices herself for her chosen family to continue to keep running. She says, they found an old abandoned barn, and she says, you sleep in the hayloft, and I'm gonna sleep on the ground. And then she takes the ladder away. So when the recruiters come to round everybody up, they only see that there's this little old woman sleeping down in the bottom part of the loft. And so this is a part of the story where the rest of the family is completely devastated. They've lost Minerva, the kind of like the beating heart of their chosen family. We threw our packs to the ground below, and then one by one, we jumped after them. When the last body had fallen, we straightened ourselves out and re-shouldered our packs. We stopped at Minerva's bed, rolled up the bags, and folded her faded star blanket. Wab took that one. She unfolded it halfway to tuck Riri's soft blankie inside and then folded it back over, her grief inside grief like blankets themselves. It was Rose who found the jingles, In a small fold of hide were 24 rolled tin lids. They weren't smooth and uniform like the jingles we'd seen in old pictures hung from women's dresses, being danced into grand entries at the old powwows when we were safe to make noise. These were rough around the edges from our camp can opener and stamped with expiry dates and some with company names, Campbell's, Heinz. We passed them around, careful not to slice our fingers on their jagged curves. But why? Aren't these supposed to make noise? Slopper was confused. We'd been told over and over that silence was the only way to move out here, the only way to stay alive. It was Chi-Boy who answered out of character, "Sometimes you risk everything for a life worth living, even if you're not the one that'll be alive to live it." So I'm going to read that part again. Sometimes you risk everything for a life worth living, even if you're not the one that will be alive to live it.
So as you are working on your beautiful go bag, whatever that looks like for you, we want to talk a little bit more about Cherie Demeline and her hopes, and also her process in writing her indigenous speculative fiction. And so, although we're focusing on Hunting by Stars and the Marrow Thieves, we're also, and this is also available up here too, we're also really interested in her as a writer and her process and how she came to write these incredible books. And so she did a presentation, which you can find on YouTube, but also she wrote this small book based on that presentation called An Anthology of Monsters. How Story Saves Us from Anxiety. And it's really a love letter to her mentor, Lee Miracle, who is a Native scholar and activist out of Canada.
So when she sat down to write this book, she got a prompt from her editor that said, "Why don't you try out a dystopian science fiction novel?" And she sat down and she thought, well, there's nothing that I could come up with that would be as painful or dystopian or apocalyptic as what's already happened to Indigenous people in North America. And so she wanted to write a story that included some of that painful history, but also offer a light. There's this great, in several interviews she does, Demeline returns to this concept that her mentor, Lee Miracle, said about telling the darker parts of Native history. And so her mentor encouraged her to lead the audience into the darkness, but to always leave at least a window where the light can shine in. And she believed that as storytellers, we don't always know how vulnerable our audience might be, right? We don't know how they're showing up that day and what experiences they might have and bring. And that it's important to always have a door or a window for them to be able to pass through. And she writes, I chose to examine this history and tell this story because at the time we weren't having the bigger conversation about residential schools and their impact. I'm going to try and always lead with Indigenous characters who are strong, who are familiar. They are the light. So through this dark history, these amazing characters, and we're going to talk about their own stories, how they are the hope, the life beyond survival, the thrivance, and we're gonna equip you with some of those, another tool for your go bag, right?
Yeah. Just one more thing about Hunting by Stars, just in light of the process. So she was not going to write a sequel to Marrow Thieves. It was just going to be a one book. And then look at this, it's like huge. But this is what's powerful about teachers and children, that she got so many letters from young people who read the book saying that they wanted more. They needed to know what was happening to these characters who they fell in love with, and what was next. So we owe all of your students and all of their active connection to these stories and history for this beautiful second book.
These middle schoolers, they actually made like Instagram accounts for Frenchie, the character that we're going to talk about, and some of the other main characters, which Cherie Dimeline is like kind of like, oh yeah, it's kind of like a Stephen King situation. Like I have my characters like trying to DM me. It's weird. Yeah, and this is a quote that I just love. It kind of sums up the one of the kind of the hearts of Indigenous speculative fiction. Indigenous people stand with one foot always in the darkness that ended our world, and the other in a hope for a future as Indigenous people. It is from this apocalyptic in-between that Indigenous voices in speculative fiction speak. Oh, themes. Oh, great. So these are themes that are you can see broadly in Indigenous speculative fiction, but there's some really great specific examples inside of the Marrow Thieves too. So revitalizing Indigenous knowledge systems and ways of knowing and being in the present for the characters, and also building out opportunities for future generations to be able to reclaim, reinvent, and live out those ways of knowing and being. Another big theme is the idea that dreams and stories connect Indigenous people to their identities, language, history, and lifeways. Dreams are obviously a huge, important part of this novel and this world that she's built. This, you want to say anything about this, Mom?
Yeah, I'd say we had this conversation last night after the presentation about how, actually one of the things I don't think we had mentioned last night is that the presentation that we envisioned was really based on this how stories can save us from anxiety and how speculative fiction can save us. And so one of the things, speaking purely from a Blackfeet perspective, is that dreams are essential to our way of being in the world. Dreams aren't just, Jungian, things that happen in the middle of the night that help us to psychoanalyze ourselves. And I'm not critiquing that because I do belong to a dream group as well. But I think I belong to the dream group because I'm Blackfeet. And so dreams are a way that we can communicate with our ancestors. Dreams are a way that we can be brought into teachings and lessons that we need to learn. Dreams are often they're visions for the future or reflections of the past. So dreams have a very different, they're part of our way of knowing and being in the world. Would you,
Right.
Right.
That's very well
Yeah.
said.
So I think what I want to add is that there's what makes speculative fiction from an Indigenous perspective different than science fiction that's written by a non-native author is that these dreams and stories are not myths, right? They're not visions. They're not mystical. They're not magic. They are an integral part of identity and personhood. And so that's a really important thing to remember and that Cherie Dimeline does such a great job of exploring in the book. So another spoiler alert, sorry. Yeah. One of the key kind of what can break the residential school system is actually the language. So speaking at dreaming. Okay, I don't want to. No, I'll stop. Nope. It's very important not to spoil this part because it's part of the emotional
really-
arc.
Yes.
I think actually, if I could add one more word, I think it's something of a compass for a lot of us. Not like a moral or ethical compass, but like a personal directive of how we orchestrate or how we walk through the day sometimes.
So if you're around a Native person in general, but especially a Blackfoot person or a Blackfoot person, and they wake up in the morning, they're going to probably start with, "You're not going to believe this dream I just had."
So and so came and said such and such.
So this is just like the norm. So I love that about Marrow Thieves and Hunting by Stars, but also it's not just it's not binary, right? So it's a both and, because Cherie Demeline did a lot of research on dreams. And, so she talked about going down that rabbit hole of, where you get inspired by something, and like we are with speculative fiction, and kind of go there for a long time and do all this cool work. But she did some research about dreams, what Western science knows about dreams. And also, when you think about it, we spend a third of our lives in that dreamscape. So, and Western science, still, we don't know very much about what happens in that magical space.
Our last theme is this idea of reimagining alternative futures that create space for Indigenous voices to envision and shape our own realities and worlds. So this idea of sovereignty over our futures. And this is a great quote. I mean, we can start healing the land. We have the knowledge kept through the first round of these blasted schools from before that, when these visitors made their way over here like angry children throwing tantrums. So this idea that the knowledge survived the first round of boarding schools, and we will survive this next round of boarding schools, and we will survive the next apocalypse and the next one and the next one, because we have each other, and this is something that we'll talk about later.
And then just to add that this is a deep connection to also the land-based learning. And we do have some items for your bags.
Okay, so prepare for interactivity. Are you ready? We're going to ask you to come up with your own coming to story. So coming to stories in the Marrow Thieves are an important process. They are each character in the chosen family, including Frenchie, who's our main character, and I'm going to read parts of Frenchie's coming to story. So every character shares one. There's like a chapter basically devoted to each character's coming to story. And basically it's their creation story. It's called a coming to story, and everyone tells their own story. Everyone's creation story is their own. And in the book, it's very important that your coming to story is you choose when to share it, and you choose when the time is right. And there's coming to stories, there's going away stories, there's coming back stories. So there's also different, it's not like we were saying, it's not like a black and white thing. It's an important pivotal moment in your life that you would like to share with your chosen family, or your family. Did you want to talk about personal family narratives at all?
Yeah. Do we want to come back to that after?
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to read to you from Frenchie's coming to story.
And just know as you're listening too that we're going to ask you to write your own coming to story. So as you're listening to Elizabeth, just be thinking of maybe some of the elements that are happening in Frenchie's story.
So this is the beginning. This is also page 1 of the Marrow Thieves. So hopefully it'll just like light the fire in you to read it if it hasn't already been lit already.
And not really a spoiler alert.
Well, no,
we're
because I'm just
starting
reading the
it.
book. Yeah. Okay. So Frenchie's coming to story. Mitch was smiling so big his back teeth shone in the soft light of the solar-powered lamp we'd scavenged from someone's shed. Check it out! He held a bag of Doritos between us, a big bag too. Holy, Mitch, where'd you get that? I touched the air-pressurized bag to confirm it was real. My dirty fingers skittered across the shiny surface like skates. It was real. My mouth filled with spit, and a rotten hole in one of my molars yelled its displeasure. In the last house back there, hidden on top of the cupboard like Ma used to do when she didn't want us getting into stuff. Mom had only been gone a few months, so talking about her still stung. My brother popped the bag to cover our hurt, and like cheese-scented fireworks, the loud release of air and processed dust cheered us up. We were in a treehouse, somewhere in the outer rim of a small city that had long been closed down like a forgotten convenience store. We were hours out from southern metropolitan city, which used to be Toronto, back when there were still so many cities that each had a unique name instead of a direction. West City, Northeast Metropolis, Southern Township. It was a great treehouse. Some lucky kid must have had a contractor for a father. It was easily 2 stories up from the unmown lawn and had a gabled roof with real shingles. We'd been there for 3 days now, skipping school, hiding out, before we'd left with the council and we'd never seen him again. Dad had taught us that the best way to hide is to keep moving, but this spring had been damp. It had rained on and off for a week, but we couldn't resist the dry comfort of the one-room treehouse with built-in benches. Besides, we reasoned, it was up high, like a sniper hole, so we would see if anyone was coming for us. It probably started with that first pop of air against the metallic plastic, no louder than a champagne cork. I imagined the school truancy officers, recruiters we called them, coming for us. Noises to the wind, sunglasses reflecting the row of houses behind which we were nestled in our wooden dream house. And sure enough, by the time we'd crunched through the first sweet, salty handfuls, they were rounding the house into the backyard. I'm going to say a bad word, but it's in the book, so. Shit! What? Mitch put the bag down and turned to the window cut into the north wall. Francis, you're going to have to listen to me really carefully. What? I knew it was bad. He never called me Francis. No one but Mom ever did. And then only when I was in trouble. I'd been Frenchie since I could remember. Listen now. He turned away from the window to lock eyes with me. You are going to climb out the back window and onto the roof as low down as you can get. But Mitch, I can't climb out a window. Yes, you can, and you will. You're the best damn climber there is. Then, when you're on the roof, you're going to grab the pine tree behind us and climb up into it. Stay as close to the trunk as you can. You have to shimmy into the back part where the shadows are thickest. You go first. Too late, buddy. They know someone is up here, just not how many someones. I felt my throat tighten into a pinhole. This is how voices are squeezed into hysterical screeching. Mitch, no! He turned again, eyes burning with purpose, bordering on anger. Now, move it, Francis. I couldn't have him mad at me. He was all I had left. I clambered out the window and folded upward to grasp the slats on the roof. I shimmied up, belly to the wood, butt pulled down tight. I lifted my head once, just high enough to look over the small peak in the center, just enough to see the first recruiter lift a whistle to his mouth, insert it under his sandy mustache, and blow that high-pitched terror tone from our nightmares. Under the roof, I heard Mitch start banging the plywood walls, screaming, "Tabernacle, come get me, devils!" And I'm going to skip a couple pages.
Elizabeth has to read because I cry every time I read this book.
I knew I'd never see my family again if we were captured. We wouldn't be reunited at the school. I had to get down from this tree safely and keep moving. Mitch had sacrificed himself so I could live. So I had to live. It was the only thing I could do for him. I pulled myself back against the tree, hugging the craggy trunk so hard I had tectonic imprints on my cheek and thighs for 3 days after. I stayed there until the van drove off, until I couldn't hear the engine anymore, until the day filled up with the gray, until the gray turned to indigo. Then I took each sleepy limb, each screaming muscle back into service and half slid, half climbed back down the tree to the ground. The landing vibrated into my shins and set my kneecaps loose like baby teeth. I sat there a moment before the memory of the shrill siren of the recruiter's whistle shoved under my feet like slivers. I was almost to the house next door before I remembered to turn back for my backpack and the half-eaten bag of chips. The first night I kept going, running when I could, crawling against every surface that offered a shadow. I even pissed on the run, dribbling on my duct-taped boot. The morning after, when I was truly alone in the bright of day, I was all panic and adrenaline. I found a rain barrel behind a small detached bungalow at the end of a cul-de-sac somewhere by the outlet mall and drank as much water as I could, and then right away threw most of it back up. Here, the sidewalks were shot through with arterial cracks and studded with menacing weeds that had evolved to survive torrential rain and the lack of pollinators. Wildlife was limited to buzzers, raccoons the size of huskies, domestic pets left to run feral, and hordes of cockroaches that had regained the ability to fly like their southern cousins. I had been scared of them all when I was running with my brother. Now, in the wake of his removal, they were nothing. I crunched over lines of roaches like sloppy gravel, threw rocks at the pack of guinea pigs grunting at me with prehistoric teeth from under their protective awning at a corner grocery store. I'm going to skip a couple more pages. Put him down over there, right close to the fire. He's breathing all funny. Never mind now, just prop up his head. Wob, go grab that quilt from my bedroll. Jiguan, heat up some water. We'll need get some liquid into him. Voices with pulled vowels and the cut lilt of my father. Voices with the low music of my mother. I couldn't open my eyes, not yet. It was all too beautiful a dream, even just in audio. All right, now pull off his shoes and get his feet close to the pit. I felt tugging and then a relief of a good swell allowed to spread out, then heat. Hey boy, can you hear me? You'll need to drink some of this water. A metal edge split my broken lips and clear warm water poured into my mouth. I sputtered at first, a reaction to the intrusion. Then the fist in my guts demanded it and my throat opened up in compliance. The need was so great, the satisfaction so complete. I grasped for the vessel, lest it be pulled away. Easy now, easy now. I managed to open an eye. There was a man holding the tin, not my father, but a man with the same crease around his eyes. His hair was long down the middle and shaved close on the sides. He looked to be about my father's age. Over his right shoulder, a girl stared at me with one round, dark eye, her long hair draped around her face, flickering in tandem with the flames of the large fire. She handed a blanket to the man, who tucked it in around me. Jiguan, come get some soup over here. This boy is starved. The man spoon-fed me broth with sweet corn mush until the fist unclenched just long enough for me to rest. Then he put it beside me on a flat rock. When you can hold it yourself, that's when you know it's okay for you to eat more without getting sick. Who are you? It wasn't more than a whisper. It was the man who answered, standing to poke at the branches in the fire. I'm Miigwans, and this is my family. But not now. There'll be time for that tomorrow. You need to eat some more of that soup and then sleep. Tomorrow we move. Probably got some recruiters nearby with the racket you were kicking up all by yourself out there. Miigwans. I'd heard that name before. And I'll leave it there. So that's Frenchie's Coming To story. Excerpts.
Are you feeling inspired?
I could just listen to you read all
I
day.
know, me too. It's like, can we just keep going? We just make the workshop. So just to step out of the Marrow Thieves world for just a sec, there's curriculum out there in Oregon as well, and for how to teach with the Marrow Thieves that have different resources. Liz, do you you probably have developed lots of really great curricular resources around writing coming to
We
stories.
haven't done them yet, but we're going to.
Oh, excellent. So you can workshop with us here. So we are going to ask you to write your own story, but we also want to just say, where are we with the?
This
okay.
is where we are, and
Okay,
this
great.
is the journal prompt.
Great.
Do you want this
Yeah,
one?
yeah, let's do that. So we want to recognize that the coming to stories in Marrow Thieves and Hunting by Stars are generally based in, I mean, they're based in this apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic world. And so we know that, well, I guess, we've also learned that, Native folks have survived many apocalypses, and so we could, kind of speak to that. But what we also want to make sure, and especially when you're working with students, because we don't know your stories, we aren't in, we're getting to know you all, but we aren't in relationship with one another to know of the struggles that you have endured or might be enduring right now, or the people you may have lost, or the heartaches that you experience or are experiencing. And so we want to recognize and hold loving space for all of you and not demand or request of you to write a coming to story that is painful for you. And I'm always reminding my students when we talk about these issues or are having these conversations to always take care of yourself. And a way to do that is to check in with yourself and make sure you don't go to a place that you can't come back from. And if you choose to write a coming to story that is deeply connected to your own challenges that you're looking to come out of, that you hold loving space for yourself and each other, and also identify someone that you could connect with around this, so that you don't have to process these conversations or these thoughts that you're having by yourself. One of the things in terms of this work, and we talked about this yesterday about critical land-based family history, is that in the unsettling reflexivity piece, is that we're not really invested in damage-centered narratives. So again, we're not talking about hokey hope or anything. We're actually really investigating some of those ways that you have come to be the person that you are. Maybe events that have informed your awesomeness, moments in your histories that have inspired you to create the conditions for your students to succeed. Maybe it's mentors like Cherie Demeline, who writes about Lee Miracle and says all these amazing, this whole book is dedicated to this mentor who, she really, what's the word I'm looking for? She really credits for her success because she held that loving space for her. In terms of critical land-based family history, we talked about this in the afternoon session yesterday. Critical land-based family history is a little different than just family history. Critical family history is Christine Sleater, who has come here before, and she's a critical white scholar. She works with her students to develop family history projects, but they're critical. So it's really engaging students. And because she's a white scholar, she's primarily talking about folks who are immigrants to the United States, not necessarily indigenous folks. So most folks are, and many indigenous folks too have ancestors who are immigrants to the United States. We do. And so she asks us to really engage with settler colonialism and the ways that maybe our ancestors benefited and were hurt by the systems that are set in place for them or not for them. But we're also asking that with critical land-based family history is that you always keep the land as a foundational framework for thinking about who you are and where you come from. Because everywhere we are in the United States is indigenous land. It was already loved, and we're going to talk about that. Every place here was already loved, had names, We're reminded that in Banff National Park, that there are spaces in there, and there's a huge forest fire that burnt down a lot of the soil, which is really terrible. But in the process of clearing that out, they found 350 different archaeological sites, and a lot of those dated to they're so ancient that, with what we know about language, our language research, and these archaeological sites, and our own oral histories, we know that we were in that place at least, bare minimum, 10 to 12,000 years in one place. That's like a astronomical number to think that a group of people, like, you would know that land and be in deep and right respectful relationship with that place and see it change. You saw the Ice Age. There's a cave, and I'm going on, but there's a cave that our mentor Mike Bruce had talked about that has these petroglyphs in it. And it is impossible to get to that cave. But if you imagine the ice sheets, well, that cave was super accessible to people. Another, opportunity to show the proof of the longevity of people in place. So we ask that you think really deeply about your connections to land and the place that you are in, and maybe some of the more than human folks. And that's what I'll say about that. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Oh, well, I know that was a lot. We're trying to bring a lot together. We're trying to connect you to this novel that you haven't read, The Marrow Thieves. We're trying to connect this idea of how powerful personal narratives can be by themselves, and then how powerful they can be when they connect to history and family history. So take this journal prompt for what you will. You're not being graded. You don't have to, if you would like to share, as Cherie Dimmeline writes, it's your story, and you can share it if you want to at a time that you feel is appropriate, but just spend some time. Spend some time thinking about your coming to story. And we're going to pass some stuff out for you for the next part of your journey.
Yes.
Yes.
Enjoy your coming to stories.